Well, everyone, thank you for being here tonight, both online and here in our office. We are privileged and proud to have with us Adam Bautz, and Adam is the owner and guide for outdoor travel tours. He leads tours in Valley of Fire State Park, which is our neighbor, just right over the road, or on the other side of the lake, actually. So we're looking forward to Adam's presentation tonight. Adam is a veteran. He served in the United States Marine Corps, and he is a person that he and I've had a little bit of conversation, and we have a lot of things that we feel the same about. And one of them is the great outdoors and the beauty that surrounds us here in the Southwest. So with that, I'm going to ask everyone that is not Friends of Gold Butte office or Adam to please stop your camera so you don't make us go slowly tonight. Sometimes that hurts the presentation. And then also mute yourselves. And I'm going to ask my buddies here in the visitor center to kind of be quiet while Adam talks.
When we'll mute.
We'll mute ourselves too. The other thing is Adam, they're going to be able to ask you some questions at the end of your presentation, and they'll ask them in the chat as well as live. And if we can see, Mitch over here will read the questions so that people can hear what the questions are rather than just having you answer them. Does that work for you? Okay.
Yes, thank you.
All right. And again, if you'd like to ask a question in the chat, it'll be addressed at the end of the presentation. And with that, I turn it over to Adam.
Okay, well, thank you everybody for attending this evening. It's an absolute honor to be here to talk about Valley of Fire State Park. It's a place that I've really grown to love over the past over 10 years now. And like Brenda was saying, we're not too far from Gold Butte, and I've spent some time out in Gold Butte, and I know how special of a place that is. And I'd like to say thank you to all the Friends of Gold Butte for what you guys do as far as protecting that place and just pretty much just informing everybody of how special it is. And I know it's one of the more recent national monuments. So, okay, to get into why I love Valley of Fire, you got to know a little bit about me here. So we're going to try to click over here. So I was born in Maine, originally from Maine, and I think that's where I get my love for nature. And my grandfather had 600 acres. I lived with him for quite a while, and he groomed trails up in the mountains for me. And as a young child, I would go up there and I'd roam around. Please excuse my dogs. I'm also an animal lover, as you're going to see there. Now I joined the United States Marine Corps just out of high school in 2004 and kind of lost touch with nature for a little while. And I got out in 2008, so I did my 4 years, and I did 2 deployments to Iraq in those 4 years. So it was a pretty busy time for me. And it wasn't until a little bit after, approximately about 2013, when I got kind of back into nature. And that was by way of hiking a large portion of the Appalachian Trail. And I'm very honored to say that I was sponsored to do this by a nonprofit organization called Warrior Expeditions. I'm also an animal lover, like I said. Going out into nature is a beautiful thing for me, but one of the huge highlights for me and what kind of motivates me to keep returning, one of the reasons, is just seeing the animals out there. I've got over 10 years of guiding experience in Valley of Fire. I started actually guiding rappelling adventures there in 2012. I didn't do that for too long. I didn't do it under my own business. Ultimately started my own business in 2017, where I've been kind of focusing on that full time. And it's an absolute honor to be to do that, to be a guide in such a magnificent place like Valley of Fire. And going to Valley of Fire. Now, Valley of Fire is Nevada's first and largest state park. It was commissioned as a state park in 1935 and is about 47,000 acres. It's an amazing place. It's just located about an hour northeast of Las Vegas, northeast of there. And a simple drive through the park will kind of get you to know how beautiful and special the place is. I've been very fortunate enough to be able to explore this place on and off trail for quite a bit now, and I've been able to see some very special things. The state park has its awesome name because of that red sandstone. It looks like the valley's on fire from far away. And especially if you get there at a certain time, if you come in from the west entrance, it will really look like it's on fire, and it's really awesome. And that those sandstone formations about 140 million years old, which makes them Aztec sandstone. And it's just like the centerpiece of Valley of Fire. And there's a whole lot to be said when it comes to that. And going about respecting the park and overall just respecting our natural places, I think is very important. And I think that even most important now with the ever-growing population and desire to be connected. This is me out of my comfort zone. I'll be honest with you, being in front of a screen. I don't spend too much time in front of a screen. My wife was a big help to set this up for me today. So thank you. And so it's important to follow these state and federal laws that protect these resources. And of course, we don't want to remove anything. We want to leave everything as it naturally is. And that goes with wildlife. If you interact with animals, you should so at a really safe distance. And whenever I have interactions with wildlife on my tours, say if we come across a herd of bighorn sheep while we're off trail somewhere, well, I'll alter that route so I do not disrupt their natural movement. And I think that's really important, especially for me. I go out there so often, and I hope that the bighorn sheep maybe recognize me at this point. So, there's a few more rules there to cover there, and to go over here to leave no trace. So, going back to what I said, preserving these natural resources, we'd like to leave no trace, take nothing but photographs, leave nothing but footprints, only if you have to leave those footprints. And hopefully, if you're exploring in this desert region, you know about the cryptobiotic soil. I'll let you Google that, but it's important that you tiptoe around the crypto. This is the type of trash that I find out there. I guess it's important for you guys to know that I took all of these photos that we're going to see throughout this PowerPoint. And the trash is pretty, yeah, I don't like it, even the old stuff, but laws are pertaining to the old stuff to where I technically should leave this old stuff. So, it's part of the history of this park, but things like balloons, something that I find on a regular basis in remote areas, like where people that don't go, no other trash to be found, but yet there's balloons. There's brightly colored balloons, and these brightly colored balloons will kind of resemble flowers probably sometimes. And actually, ironically, there are flowers on that balloon. I have found pieces of balloon in animal droppings, so you can imagine the issues that we could have with that. So, please know that you should never release balloons for any reason at all. That's littering. And that cottontail rabbit was not drinking that beer. I want you guys to know that. All right, so we've got signs posted all around the state park, and it's important to read those signs. And if you notice, the last sign that you saw with the bighorn sheep running on the sandstone saying, "Don't climb on the sandstone," well, that's not pertaining to them. The heat can be really serious out there, as this sign states it. And it's important to know if you start your hike early in the day, it's going to gradually warm up, and you need to know that it's important to take your breaks before your body really needs the breaks. There's loads of opportunity to get into shade in Valley of Fire, which is really a perk for me, being a guide there. Safety is my number one priority every time I go out there. So it's important that we take those shady breaks, especially during those hot seasons. Bring more than what you think you're going to need, right? So that kind of goes into the proper planning. And this is a saying that I learned in the Marine Corps: proper planning prevents poor performance, right? So expect the unexpected. Bring more than what you think you're going to need, and tell at least two people where you're going, what time you expect to be back by. A lot of times people can get confused, and they can have this false sense of confidence when they go into a state park because, oh, it's a state park, there's trails. Sometimes the trails aren't that well marked, or sometimes you're not just paying attention, and you can easily wander off trail without knowing, and that can kind of end up into some dangerous scenarios. And throughout the years of guiding out in the Valley of Fire, I've found upwards of around 50 people throughout the years, so that were lost, some in more need than others. So it's important that we're properly prepared when we go and explore these beautiful areas. Um, and bring plenty of water, of course, and it depends on the season. I've got a 6-liter bladder that I carry in my backpack, and I have a reserve that's in a different bladder. Okay. Or, if you don't want to worry about all that, you can hire a guide. Valley of Fire is also known for a lot of film significance. So Viva Las Vegas, fitting. I come from Las Vegas right now. The Professionals, that was filmed out there in 1966. And in that small photo there, you can see the wall. Now that wall can be found on the White Dome Scenic Loop Trail. It's 1.25 miles long. And that's the remnants of what would have been a Mexican hacienda in that movie. And it's cool to look back at these old Western films to see parts of the Valley of Fire that I know very well. Um, Outside Mars scenes like Total Recall and all that thing, all stuff like that pertaining to space, like Star Trek Generations. Well, this is pretty obvious reason. It feels like you're exploring a different planet when you're walking through Valley of Fire, and especially if you're in that red area, it looks maybe like Mars. So lots of car commercials are also filmed in Valley of Fire. I've witnessed many of them being done there. Here's another photo of the wall. So this wall's been standing there since 1966. And back then, this is 1 year or 31 years after this became a commissioned state park. So I got to imagine back then they were kind of excited, that being the people that were running the state park, when production teams reached out to them and wanted to film movies. So maybe they didn't have in mind preservation, keeping it in its natural state. So it seems to be that they let the production gather the existing sandstone and build walls and stuff like that. So now it stands there as a historical little feature, but nowadays, leave no trace is implemented even for productions. So loads of historical significance pertaining to Valley of Fire. Really going back 500 million years ago, the valley was a sea. And as much as you may want to visualize fish swimming around the sandstone formations as you drive through, it wasn't happening because the sea dried up and ultimately the sandstone was pushed up out of the ground about 140 million years ago. And it was pushed out of the ground due to the shifting of the Earth's crust. There's a major fault line within the Muddy Mountains that kind of separate Valley of Fire and Lake Mead National Recreation Area. So very dramatic landscape and a lot of history pertaining to Native Americans. And this history can be seen on the sandstone. And these are petroglyphs that can be found at Valley of Fire. Specifically, this panel can be found on Mouse's Tank Trail. And it's a short trail about 1 mile long out and back. And this looks to be maybe some bighorn sheep. Maybe we'll never know, though. And then the road was built through the Valley of Fire. It was part of the Arrowhead Trail to connect Salt Lake City and Los Angeles. And in the 1920s, Valley of Fire was named supposedly by a AAA official who was traveling the road at sunset and reportedly explained that the entire region looked like it was on fire. And it looks like it's on fire because of that dense iron that is oxidized from that sandstone. And it really is that beautiful red or orange color, as you can see behind me, if you can see me now. Valley of Fire became a state park, like I said, in 1935, which is also the same year the Hoover Dam was completed. As part of the repertoire of being a tour guide for so long in Las Vegas, I think it's only necessary that at some point I was a Hoover Dam tour guide, and I must say that it was the best dam tour guide around. And let me know if you have any dam questions at the end of this. And yes, we all have those same dam jokes. From landscape to ancient cultures, Valley of Fire is diverse and rich in history in many ways. And it's a really special thing to be able to not only learn about it, but to see it right in front of you. And here we have another panel that's located on Mouse's Tank Trail. That's me pointing it out to some clients of mine. And I really like that panel a lot because there's a whole lot to be told there. and a whole lot that we'll never know, maybe who was trying to say or why they were trying to say it. I think it's pretty obvious that there's a variety of dates that range between some of these petroglyphs. So some are a lot darker than others. We have to assume that the brighter ones are a lot newer. The record books say that the oldest petroglyphs in Valley of Fire date back to about 4,000 years ago. So pretty amazing stuff there. There's another panel off to the right that's located somewhere off trail. And loads of panels all in the southwest of petroglyphs. And I must say that I have deep respect for indigenous cultures. And I also understand that sharing photographs of petroglyphs can be kind of a touchy subject. And I really hope that I'm not offending anybody by showing a couple photos of these petroglyph panels. And if so, I do apologize. So what do they mean? We really don't know what these petroglyphs mean. I do have hopes that indigenous cultures today know what some of these symbols mean. I know them as rock art, petroglyphs, rock carvings, but there's a whole lot of detail there, and we may not know what they mean, but we certainly know that this was a thought, this was an image in somebody's mind a long time ago. And in order to do this, it took a fair bit of time, so something like with all those dots and things like that, and that piece is about 3 feet across, I believe, would have had to have taken at least an hour, I would assume. And I've never done one like that, but it was done by pecking, scratching, or chiseling through the sandstone, exposing that brighter, newer surface from within. And what kind of benefits us here in Valley of Fire and also in other regions where you can find sandstone is the black surface that these indigenous people used as their canvas to draw these petroglyphs. This black surface is known as desert varnish to a lot of people. So here are a couple of my guesses with really probably popular panel. This panel is located near the Atlatl Rock area, and both animals, the horned lizard, top left, and the desert tortoise, bottom left, I think this really resembles these guys. And that's on the same panel, like I said, near Atlatl Rock. Really special area. So, something really amazing that I'd like to think about is these critters have been around for a long time, and these people that made the petroglyphs were looking at the same things that I get to look at almost every day. It's pretty awesome. So I mentioned Atlatl Rock. It's a mouthful. Hopefully I'm saying that right. This is why this area is called Atlatl Rock. You'll find that shortly after you enter, there'll be the second left if you count the dirt road, if you enter Valley of Fire from the west entrance. This will also take you near the campground. So the stairs that you can see there go up to the panel that's to the left. And that's only the top portion of that panel. But the reason why I wanted to zoom in on that is this is the reason why that area in this rock feature has the name Atlatl Rock. What we think is a bighorn sheep at the top there, the petroglyph, and then that would have been the atlatl, and then the below that would have been the dart that would have been thrown from the atlatl. So an atlatl would have been a tool made by the Native Americans, made of bone, perhaps mesquite wood, maybe about 2 feet long. There'd be a handle on one end and a notched hook on the other. They'd place that spear or the dart, it'd be a smaller spear, in that notched hook. They'd rear it over their shoulder and they'd catapult it. And it allowed these natives to hunt at much more accuracy, but also allowed them to throw that mini spear, that dart, at a much higher velocity. So you can imagine what that would do as far as benefiting their people and their survival rate. Okay, so water in the desert. It's important to know that we're in the Mojave Desert. It's one of the driest areas in North America, so water is very important here. And the water that we find in Valley of Fire, really within the sandstone area, it's going to be seasonally based, and it's all based off of rainwater. And these pockets within the sandstone, they're natural basins within the sandstone that will collect rainwater and hold it until it evaporates. And these are known as tanks. And I've read a couple things and been told by a couple people that some indigenous people would know these as Tanahas. So this is one of the famous tanks located at the end of Mouse's Tank Trail. Excuse me. Now, Mouse's Tank Trail, I've mentioned that a couple times. The story has it, and the way that, or the reason why it has its name, supposedly it's named after a Paiute renegade Native American who killed two prospectors in the late 1890s. And after he did this, he fled to probably then wasn't known as Valley of Fire, but now is. And he was able to stay and hide out in that area right near where that water is. Excuse me. For about 2 months, the story has it. So Little Mouse was able to hide out and live off of that water for about 2 months. And ultimately, that water is going to evaporate. It's going to dry up. And then the story has it that Little Mouse fled the area and he was caught, and then he paid the ultimate price. And they actually paraded Little Mouse around the town of Overton, Nevada, to celebrate that he was caught. That's the story that I've heard. So tanks are found all throughout the park. And here's another shot of that same tank, the larger one, and then this lower one to the left here. So you can see there's actually two tanks there, and this other tank is located off trail. So there are probably thousands of tanks throughout Valley of Fire, and they'll last sometimes more than 2 months. And it's not always dictated on how big the tank is. It's really depending on the location of it. So imagine if this tank is located at the bottom of a slot canyon that does not get sunlight much of the day. Evaporation is going to be fairly slow. So I've seen some small tanks last for a long time as well. All right, so moving on to the plants. The plants are really amazing. And one of the more, I think, incredible things for me, I get to go to Valley of Fire kind of day in and day out, and I see the changes occur. And a lot of the changes that I'm able to witness and see and notice come from the plants. And to be able to survive out in this desert, you have my respect totally. And you can see that beautiful flower there. So that is Datura. I know that's the first half of its Latin name. It's got a lot of different names to it, including spiny apple, also moonflower. This flower tends to open up its largest at night. And I've also read that Native Americans used to use this plant in ways to maybe potentially made them hallucinate. Lovelock Cave in Nevada, maybe about the Datura. The springtime bloom can potentially showcase tens of thousands of flowers within 2 months span. And I'm always blown away of seeing any flower, but especially at the numbers. And we've been seeing them at really good numbers, especially last year. Last year was like some record-breaking numbers for me as far as the primroses go. And here's some variety of the flowers here that we'll see out there during springtime. And now's the time, my friends. These flowers are just starting to open up. The top left here, that white flower, that is known as desert chicory. The purple one, this is known as scorpion weed. It's beautiful, very thin stem, and it looks hairy. A rule out here in the desert, if it looks hairy, you don't want to touch it. That's a defense to prevent from being eaten from other animals. We got the beautiful orange flower. This is the only orange flower that blooms in Valley of Fire. This is known as globe mallow, also known as apricot mallow. Lower left, that is the brittle bush. It's only showcasing the flowers, but there's also a honeybee on there. And then the middle here, that's nettle, also known as stinging nettle. So that will bloom beautiful white flowers. The hummingbirds love them. And it's known as stinging nettle for a good reason. If you brush up against it with your bare skin, you're going to feel the stinging occur because those hairs are like little needles that are going to be stuck in your skin. A lot of us hikers know it as the Velcro plant, and my Gold Butte friends probably know about it too. If you brushed up against it with your shoes or any type of clothing, it's going to stick to you like Velcro. And rule on my tours, if you get it stuck to you, we got to call you Little Nettle for the rest of the day. We got creosote right here with the little yellow flower. Creosote's one of my favorite plants. It's not the prettiest plant, but I love the smell of the creosote plant. And anybody that loves the desert as much as me would like the creosote because whenever it rains, which of course isn't too often, get an average rainfall of about 4 to 6 inches a year out here. To be considered a desert, we have to receive less than 10. So whenever it does rain finally, because of the abundance of creosote plants that we have all in the Valley of Vegas and all throughout Valley of Fire, the whole area will smell like the creosote bush. So if you're ever wondering what it smells like on a rainy day, you want a cup of leaves in your hand, give it warm moisture by breathing on it, and then smell. It's really pungent. You're either going to hate it or love it. And like I said, I really loved it. And then we've got another shot of the datura plant. All right. And if I have any botanists in the crowd today, please speak up and correct me, my friends, because I am learning. I'm pretty much self-taught. I learned from books, videos. I went back to school recently, took a geology course at UNLV, and I'm constantly learning about new things. But the plant life has been a bit of an obstacle for me because every plant seems to have like 10 different names. So it can be confusing for a tour guide anyway. So this yellow plant with the pointed petals, I believe is Mojave aster. Below that is desert marigold, another picture of the brittle bush, the scorpion weed. Now we're getting into the cacti. Lower right is the beaver tail prickly pear when it's blooming. This is a beautiful cactus and is quite abundant in Valley of Fire. And these are going to be blooming probably within about 2 weeks from now in Valley of Fire. And here's another really big brittle bush. This is probably the most abundant flowering plant that we have in Valley of Fire. And the contrast of the yellow that pops with the sandstone is really, really beautiful. Here's a really nice primrose. This last year, the primroses were as abundant as I'd ever seen them, or more abundant. And for each plant, I counted like over 50 flowers on each plant, and that's really amazing. And they have a really nice smell to them. And down here in the middle to the right, that's called a mariposa, which means butterfly in Spanish. And this is like a wandering little plant that normally you can find growing in the middle of another plant, and it kind of relies on that other plant to kind of lean on and maybe give it some stability, but really pretty flowers when you get a chance to see them. And some more globe mallow, got a brittle bush with some really nice sandstone formation and some more creosote. Okay, so now we're into the cacti. Now we got the barrel cacti here, and I've been told and read a couple of different areas that for every 12 inches tall is about 25 years of growth of the barrel cactus. So I believe that because I don't see too many that are over a foot tall, and when I do, it's really amazing. And this one was flowering at the time. This cactus is different than a lot of other cacti because if you brushed up against this, the spines are going to stay intact with the cactus, but they're going to poke you and they're going to lacerate you. Misconception of this cactus is that it's full of water. That's not the case. And we might think that because back in the day when we watched Looney Tunes, Elmer Fudd would stick a spigot in the side of that cactus, but they don't work that way. It actually has a solid white core and it does have moisture in it, but it's not really that accessible. And for the animals, they're not really going to go after that unless they're in desperate need of moisture, which sometimes they are. And I have photographed and seen barrel cacti that were torn to pieces. And I've actually photographed bighorn sheep slamming their hoofs and horns into it just to get into it, to get that moisture. We have the fishhook cactus. These are really cool and normally pretty small. I think the average height of these in Valley of Fire, only about 5 inches tall. So you got to really keep your eye out for these. We can see the remnants of that red thing. That was going to be, or what's left of a little fruit that grows from it. And if you zoom in there, you can see why it's called the fishhook cactus. Those spines are curved like a fishhook. And then we've got a beautiful hedgehog cactus, also known as a strawberry hedgehog cactus, due to the color of that beautiful flower there. Okay, and we've got this special stuff right here. This is kind of a cross between a fungus or a moss or an algae. And I had a botanist on my tour one day and he got really excited when he saw this. And he explained to me that each color is a different species of lichen. And it's able to extract the nutrients it needs to survive from the sandstone. And it does photosynthesize. So then he asked me, "You liking that lichen?" And of course, I have to use that saying every tour, every chance I get. All right, so here's another picture of beavertail prickly pear cactus in bloom. Again, you can only see these flowers about 2 months of the year. We've got the cholla cactus. This cholla cactus, same as this one down below, really awesome cactus, and it actually produces a perfect spot for certain birds to make nests in. We'll talk more about that later on. When the cholla cactus dies, it leaves its skeleton behind, and you can see what's to the right of that. That would have been a really healthy cactus at some point, and they're pretty neat. All right, we got two more plants here. Got the Chuckwalla's Delight. I gotta love the name of that plant. It's a little yellow flower, and that is a chuckwalla in the middle of that plant. I was really excited to see the chuckwalla in it. I don't really commonly see the chuckwallas in the middle of bushes like that. And there's my wife here that helped me make this PowerPoint today, showing us how big these yuccas could potentially get. If you have ties to Peru, you might know these as yuccas. The root is going to be edible and like a potato. These stalks that you can see, they grow seasonally if the conditions are right, and it will look like a piece of asparagus as it grows. And behind Nicole there, behind her head there, you can see some fresh stalks where there's actually white flowers that will then drop the seeds. So the yuccas, very sharp. Watch yourself. All right, my favorite topic, the mammals in Valley of Fire. Because it's so dry, and it just makes everything that you see out there with a beating heart that much more special. And they're just really cute. Look at that little sploot right there, bottom right. Okay, that's the white-tailed antelope ground squirrel. And these guys are actually really common to see out there. As easy as going to the Valley of Fire Visitor Center, go to the back side of it. There's a bird feeder, and 99% chance you're going to see these little ground squirrels there. This is a bighorn sheep here. This is a ewe, a mature female, and very long neck. This is also the angle in which she's poking her head from. I made her look like part giraffe. And this is a ram. So the male desert bighorn sheep is known as the ram, and the females are known as ewes. And as you can see, they both have horns that grow continuously throughout their lifetime. So unlike deer, they're not going to shed their horns. And the female horns, they're going to get kind of long, not long enough to make a complete curl to where the tip of that horn is facing upwards. And they're going to be a lot thinner in diameter at the base of that horn and up throughout than the ram horns. I get very, very lucky to be able to spend so much time in Valley of Fire. And this has allowed me to get some really cool photographs of these animals. I shot most of these photographs with my Nikon P950. It's a point and shoot. Again, I'm not too much into the tech. I want something to be able to zoom, allow me not to disturb these animals, but still allow me to have a good quality image. And I've learned a lot by looking back at photographs of these animals. We've got a younger male in the front here, the bigger photo, and then we've got a big group of some big mature rams kind of just hanging out. And this was seen right from the road here. So good chance you can see the Nevada state animal just by driving through Valley of Fire. And here is your proof of that, my friends. So these are just two big rams, and they were fighting. Were they fighting for fun? Were they fighting because they got into an argument? Maybe they were fighting because they both wanted to eat the same bush, or maybe wanted to get with the same lady. Who knows? But they put on a show for us. So you got to watch it when you drive through Valley of Fire. Go at slow speed. It's posted slow, but I recommend go even slower because you can really miss out on some of these sites. These ones, nobody's missing out on these ones, as well as these ones. So I know the rangers, I know these people that run the park, and of course, they don't want us to stop right in the middle of the road, okay? Unless the animals are in danger. And I think in some cases, this is warranted, as well as the photo before this, because yes, the animals are in the road. So there's potential of them getting hit. So, come to a stop, let them cross the road or do whatever they're doing. And then once they're off, continue on. They don't want you stopping in the middle of the road if you see bighorn that are off in the distance, or any animal, because they see you. Okay, even if you don't see them, they're all around Valley of Fire. And I've read that the populations can sometimes reach about 800 desert bighorn sheep. We have one of the healthiest desert bighorn sheep herds in the country, and because of that, they are sometimes relocated, which I don't love because I consider some of these ones my friends, but they relocate them in places like Utah to establish healthier herds. So here's a rare day, not just seeing the bighorn sheep, but the snow in Valley of Fire. So this was a few years back, and this was February, and just awesome chance to go out there and see some snow and photograph some of these bighorn sheep with the snowy background. And here's my unicorn. I got to see this guy a few years in a row. It's been a little over a year since I've seen him. Obviously, I can tell the difference between him and the others. And I have found skulls of rams, and it's important to know that they are very heavy. These horns are very heavy. The horns of these animals are actually made of keratin, so the same material that your fingernails are made out of, and very thick and strong. And then here is the king of Valley of Fire. I saw him a couple years ago, but this is as big as they get as far as for me and for what I've seen in the past. You can see the tip of this horn, his right one is pointing straight up. That the left one would have been the same, but you can see an obvious break there, probably just through fighting and rubbing on plants and mesquite trees. They do that quite often. And I've been lucky enough to see rams battle it out. And here's one of those times. And this wasn't too long ago. Um, I got to go out there on a solo hike. So I guide in Valley of Fire, but I spent a lot of my days off hiking in Valley of Fire as well. That's how much I love the place. And I get to see some really great things on my solo hikes. And this day specifically was a really special one. I heard these rams fighting before I saw them, and you're going to see what I'm talking about here shortly. And so I followed the sound, and without encroaching them, making them feel kind of uncomfortable, I sat down kind of nearby. They didn't care though; they didn't really pay any attention, and I got to see following. So just we'll do that one more time. So that video really doesn't do it justice because it's very, very loud and it sounds like a gunshot going off. And I can imagine if you don't know about rams hitting horns, hitting heads, it can be alarming if you do hear that. But it's really a sight to see, and I hope you all have a chance to see that. Um, Unfortunately, I find things like this, and that's just the way of life out there. All things that live in Valley of Fire also die in Valley of Fire. And the skull on the right, so hopefully someone can cue in at some point or later on. I think it is a spotted skunk uh, skull. This is something that I've only gotten footage of on a game camera, but I do know that they're out there. But I found that years ago. All right, the white-tailed antelope ground squirrel. This guy's probably maybe one of the cutest critters out there, and everything that lives in Valley of Fire has adapted very well to this desert climate. Specifically, the ground squirrel. These guys have the ability to withstand a body temperature of 108 degrees Fahrenheit before having to seek shade. And it's really cool when you see them going to cool down because they'll run off into the shade and they'll flatten their bodies out, and kind of like a sploot. If you have any dogs, you probably know what that is. They flatten out in the cooler area where the shade is, and that's a way to kind of cool their core temp down in a faster way. And you can see how they stand up sometimes. This was a really lucky shot that I was able to obtain just from the back side of the visitor center. They were probably fighting over some bird seed, or potentially it was mating season for them. I do believe that these are two male ground squirrels, and it ha all happened really, really fast, but they came together. They weren't hugging and loving each other. They were fighting, and they would link together and just roll. And that's like the ball that they would be in when they would roll around, and sand was flying everywhere, and it was just a really cool sight to see. Now, every so often, I'm kind of surprised with an animal out there, and this certainly was one of those surprises. This is a donkey, a wild donkey known as a burro, and we do have these guys coming into Valley of Fire, especially on the east entrance of the park. So occasionally, which I've only seen them in Valley of Fire like 2 times over the 1,000+ times that I've been there. So keep your eye out. All right, so we got some rabbits here. We've got two different species. The one on the right, the larger picture, that's the black-tailed jackrabbit. And the one on the left, both of those photos, that's the cottontail rabbit. So good luck seeing either one of these guys. They're really aware of their surroundings. Due to those big ears, they're able to hear you coming, and they tend to kind of wait until you're within like 15 feet from where they are, and then they just bolt out of the bush. So not too common for me to even be able to photograph these animals. The black-tailed jackrabbit, as you can see, it's very tall. It actually can stand about 2 feet tall from tip of the ear to bottom of the paw and run about 35 miles per hour. It's actually what Bugs Bunny's themed after. Looney Tunes. Okay, guys, so we've got some bats, and the top left is a canyon bat, and the top right is a Townsend big-eared bat. Unfortunately, down below, this is the same type of bat, and I think that's a dead canyon bat, and it's caught up in some nettle. Unfortunately, the nettle can be a pain for the animals as well. Very obvious that this bat flew into the nettle and got hung up and stuck there and perished. And here's a coyote. So the coyotes are around, but very rare to see. I've only been able to photograph a coyote a couple times, other than putting out a game camera. So I will say game cameras have a lot of laws pertaining to how you can use them, if and when you can use them. And if and when I use game cameras, the people that run Valley of Fire, they are well aware of me using them. And sometimes I'm using game cameras that are owned by Valley of Fire State Park. So here's one of those videos of a beautiful coyote. think it's important for me as a guide and for a lover of this place to implement game cameras because it allows me to see animals that I potentially have never seen before. And it can also give me a window maybe into their behavior. Because, of course, when we're around wild animals, they're going to act a little different. So when we can get footage of them without our presence, I think that's going to be pretty special. And the next video for me is the Holy Grail so far. It's been my kind of I've been on the hunt to get a wild cat for a long time, and I was able to get a bobcat. Okay, and I just saw my first bobcat ever, actually on a trip to California. So I still haven't seen a bobcat with my own eyes in Valley of Fire, but I was able to get this. So of course, I was very excited when I saw that, and still, it's a huge highlight for me. Okay, the birds now. This is a beautiful Phenopepla, and this is a male Phenopepla. The females are going to be gray, but they both will have the red eyes, and pretty common to be seen in Valley of Fire. Got a couple fly catchers. So these birds are cool because they'll hover above a plant and they'll flap their wings and they'll pretty much wish in a bunch of wind from those flapping wings and it will flush out all of the insects. So a moth will take flight out of it and that bird that's hovering above it created that wind will just ambush that insect right out of the air. And I've seen them do it and it's really just awesome way to hunt. Speaking of hunting, here's a beautiful red-tailed hawk. And the left side, those two photos were taken on the same hike. And my wife was with me for this one. We heard these red-tailed hawks just uh, squealing. I don't really know what to say as far as what their sound is called, but it was so loud and high pitched. And I turned the corner and I seen them, and then I realized why. And they were celebrating their kill probably. And you can see the red-tailed hawk that's in flight that's carrying like the lower end of a black-tailed jackrabbit, and that's the same hawk perched on top, yelling to celebrate. That he's got it. So quite the sight to see. So hummingbirds are incredible. And this has been a huge highlight for me as well, is seeing not only hummingbirds, but getting to see where these hummingbirds nest. And I get to see the nest and then I get to revisit it a couple weeks later. So I see what was eggs become chicks, what were chicks become birds in flight out of the nest. And something to note here, this is all the same nest and the same chicks and the same mama there. It's nested in nettle. I showed you the pictures of the dead bat earlier. That is the same plant, like the same exact plant. And that dead bat was hanging in the nettle plant for about a month until a windstorm came through. And this nettle plant is located in a slot canyon. And some wind came through and blew that bat down finally. And about a week later, I was down there by myself and I could see this hummingbird kind of hanging out. And I watched it for a little while and it was building a nest. So I turned around. I didn't want to go near it. I went back and I revisited and I got to see it. It had built a nest and I got to see, these chicks grow and fly out. And so this plant, it took a life, but it helped produce lives, right? So that's the cycle in Valley of Fire, and a cycle that would easily be missed if I was just in there for a day hike and out. So I think it's a wren on the left, and I believe this is a rare sighting for me anyway in Valley of Fire, the mountain bluebird, the Nevada state bird right there in the middle. We got the Gambel's quails up to the right and lower than that. Another rare sighting for me anyway are robins in Valley of Fire. So we have migrating birds that come through Valley of Fire. So sometimes I see things that just really aren't normal there. There's the roadrunner. They're out there and I see tracks of them more than I see them. Obviously, they don't look like the cartoon. They make it look like an ostrich in the cartoon, and they don't go beep beep in real life. I hate to ruin that for you, but they're fierce hunters. They're known to hunt and eat rattlesnakes, actually. They are really quick with moving their beak. And here's a really cool shot with my game camera. Now, all three of the game camera videos I'm showing you are all in the same spot. So to show you the diversity here. Whoa. I was pretty excited to get that. There you go. One more time if you weren't paying attention. Beep beep. All right. So here's some turkey vultures, and it is common for them to get up on top of the sandstone and spread their wings like that. I'm not really sure why they do it. And here's a really awesome bird, the raven. And normally when you see one raven, there's going to be another one nearby. I still have to kind of look this up, but I feel like they mate for life. They're just always around with another one. I was hiking in the Andes one time, and my guide told me the Andean condor mate for life. And when one dies, the one that's still alive will fly as high as it can go and close its wings and fall to the earth and kill itself. Pretty deep. Moving on, the finches. This is also known as the common house finch. The red-headed finch is the male, and the female is the brown one. And they're perched on the cholla cacti. Now, that cholla cactus is very sharp and is barbed like porcupine quills. And here's some nests that I see sometimes. We've got kind of a rare nest to see within the sandstone pockets. The way that the sandstone erodes can make these weird pockets, and perfect little habitats for these birds to make nests. And we've got a cactus wren nest there. And these birds are going to make their nests within the cacti for a very important reason. This is going to protect their eggs from being eaten from snakes and lizards. Here's one of my favorite sightings of all time, just in wildlife period, but especially in Valley of Fire. This is a horned owl. And I saw this guy early on one morning, and I descended down into the canyon. I was on a solo hike, and I heard it. I heard this little sound, and I look over, and it's about 15 feet away, eye level to me, and I was able to get these photographs of it. And then it flew out. It flew directly towards me without making a sound, and within 2 feet of my face, it changed direction and flew straight out of the top of the canyon, and I was blown away. I was amazed. All right, insects. We'll make this quick. No one likes the creepy crawlies, but we got to talk about them. We got some scorpions, not too common to see, especially if you're not rolling over rocks, but they're out there. This is a weird sighting for me. I've only seen this a couple times. I believe this humongous grub is eventually going to grow to be a Hercules beetle. Correct me if I'm wrong there. We do have a lot of different beetles that are in Valley of Fire. Got a dragonfly, another little beetle. Monarch butterflies. So occasionally we see monarch butterflies coming through the area. Got the black widow. May not tell you this, or shouldn't tell you this, but that black widow was photographed in one of the restrooms in Valley of Fire. So be careful. And then I think that's an orbed weaver on the right. And then the tarantula spider. So a rare sighting for me, and one of the probably the more horrific ones. This tarantula was dragging this lizard as it was eating it through this canyon. And I was guiding at the time these three young ladies, and they didn't really particularly like the sight of that. Got the tarantula hawk. Now, that's the wasp with the bright orange wings, and it has its name, the tarantula hawk. It spends a lot of its time hunting the tarantula. When it finds it, it will sting the tarantula, paralyzing it, keeping it alive for a very important reason. It will then drag the tarantula down into its den, where it will then lay its eggs in the abdomen of that spider, where then the eggs will hatch and the larvae will start eating the tarantula. And most of the time when they eat the tarantula is still alive. It's kind of creepy. Now don't worry, it gets worse. The tarantula hawk has the second most painful and powerful sting in the insect kingdom. And then that's a locust in the middle there. All right, reptiles, another highlight for me. And these are all horned toads. There's another picture of a horned toad. Not too common to see, but if you're out near the fire wave area and potentially kind of what's known as the Seven Wonders Trail, keep your eye out for these guys. They're not going to be moving too quickly. They rely heavily on their camouflage, so they tend to just kind of stay put and let you walk past them. And they'll do a lot of running around eating ants. And to a really rare critter to see, the desert tortoise. So the desert tortoise is endangered and highly protected due to its defense mechanism. To deter the predator away, it releases its bladder. It pees all over the place. This is actually a common defense mechanism between turtles, tortoises, toads, and frogs, okay? So it's going to deter the predator away. But because it lives in such a dry climate, if and when it does this, it can dehydrate and die. So that's why it's really important, if you ever encounter a desert tortoise, keep your distance. They're rare. They spend 85% of their life underground, and they can live up to 80 years and gets to about 2 feet across on the top of the shell. So they eat the prickly pear, and they're just awesome. I've been lucky enough to see probably over 50 of them. And here's a little video I was able to take. Notice the vegetation hanging from his lips. Sometimes their lips are bright green from all the eating they're doing. All right, the chuckwalla. Now, the chuckwalla will look like a deflated airbag as he lies across a sandstone basking in the sun. And as a predator approaches the chuckwalla, he's going to scurry off into a crack in the sandstone, which is always going to be nearby. And then if the predator starts messing with him, you might hear, and I've heard him do this a couple times, they go, when they suck in a bunch of air, blows himself up like a balloon, which makes it impossible to pull him out of the crack. So the one in the middle there, you can see, I think something was wrong with that chuckwalla. It was still blown up, but it was out of the crack. All right, the desert iguana, one of the largest lizards that we have in Valley of Fire, and they tend to be out during the warmest time of the day. They get about 2 feet long. They're pretty neat. And there's a rare sighting of one in a tree in a catclaw acacia. It's in the mesquite family. And this one was catching bees and eating them. It was really cool, next to Lone Rock. All right, here's some side blotched lizards. Top right is a male, top left is a female. If you're wondering how I know that, well, look at the bottom photos, my friends. That's how I know it. They are mating. All right, we have the zebra tail lizard. I believe this is a male because of the bright colors that you can see kind of on its underbelly. This is known as the fastest lizard in the Mojave Desert. I've clocked them on an ATV tour before that I used to guide at like 17 miles an hour. And I've also read that they run so fast, sometimes they're running on just their hind legs, which is just really impressive. And they have that name zebra tail lizard because of that tail, that black and white stripe. Off to the Great Basin whiptail lizard. These guys are pretty neat, pretty long. It's a close up. This is a rare sighting for me, and I've only seen about 3 in Valley of Fire. This is a long-nosed leopard lizard, and the reading that I've done about these guys tells me that they're kind of fierce hunters, and they'll eat other lizards. Off to the rattlesnakes, the sidewinder rattlesnake, the most common rattlesnake to be found in Valley of Fire. But not common to see, okay? And I don't want these critters to deter anybody from going to Valley of Fire, hopefully. Please remember, I've spent a lot of time out there, and I always have my camera with me. The sidewinder is a really docile critter. I have actually stepped very close to one. I didn't see him at first. I slowly backed away. It didn't try to bite me. It didn't even rattle, actually. Okay, so I don't want you to be too scared of these animals. But if you see something, slowly back away from it. You know, that's just a way of respecting. So the sidewinder, and this is the speckled rattlesnake, actually a rare sighting for Valley of Fire, a speckled rattlesnake. And this one was very big, at least 3, maybe 4 feet long. Got the red spotted toads. So we're only going to see these guys when it's slightly warm and enough moisture. I think they live most of the time in the deep sand. But anytime that you see tadpoles in the tanks in Valley of Fire, That's the red spotted toad, okay? And this is a corn snake, rare sighting. I haven't seen many of these in Valley of Fire, and I photographed this guy next to the Atlatl Rock area. And the rarest sighting of them all, my friends, the Gila monster. This is the largest lizard indigenous to North America and one of 3 venomous lizards in the world. I've seen 6 in my life. 5 were in Valley of Fire. They're just awesome. And they store a ton of fat in that tail of theirs, which allows them to spend a ton of time underground. And they've actually been known to spend about 98% of their life underground. And they can get to about 2 feet, potentially closer to 3 feet long, and probably like 8 to 10 inches around. Also, their patterns are very unique and to the individual. So it's almost like our fingerprints. So herpetologists can track these guys just by photographing them. The Gila monster. All right, here's a few tracks here. So we got a lizard track to the left and a track that was made by a beetle, and a sidewinder track up to the left. Okay, you can see that hook at the bottom of that track. Whatever side that hook is on is the direction the sidewinder snake is moving. We've got a coyote track. Lower right is a bighorn track. Notice how the hoofs do spread open like that. That definitely helps them climb the sandstone. And top right, that's a track from desert tortoise. All right, the geology in Valley of Fire, what can I say? It rocks, okay? It's amazing. It's made up of sandstone formations, Aztec sandstone that has taken on the color of the main mineral composition. So again, this orange color is the deep iron that is oxidized. Pair that with the black surface that is known as desert varnish. And then you have other colors throughout the park that is going to be consists of silica, and it's going to change colors. Before we get to that, here's an awesome fossil I found on one of my clients found this on the hike. Of course, it's still out there. Everything we find in Valley of Fire, we keep it in Valley of Fire. I think this is a brachiopod, which is like a shelled creature, which is about 350 million years old. Pretty wild. So here's the color changes here. So yellow sandstone, more silica. When there's purple in it, that's more of manganese. This is a famous feature of fire wave. And Heart Rock, this is a really special feature. Probably not a lot of people know about it, but really just awesome natural feature. And look at how the holes will form within the sandstone. This is all erosion due to wind. So the sandstone hardened at different density levels. The less dense areas of the sandstone is what's going to erode faster. And that's why we have all these interesting holes and arches and weird shapes like this. This is Happy Jack. And Happy Jack agrees that geology rocks. We're almost done, my friends. Here's some animal rock formations. So here's Tortoise Rock. Good luck finding that one. Here's a Mountain Lion Rock to the left, or Tortoise Rock. Owl Rock, Duck Rock, and these are big. And the famous Elephant Rock, located just next to the east entrance. So guys, I've been able to learn this park because of what I do professionally. I guide hiking adventures, and my niche is guiding hiking adventures for my clients that bring them off trail in Valley of Fire. And my business name is Outdoor Travel Tours. And I say I show people the better side of Las Vegas, but you know, I think a lot of people don't know of the natural side of Vegas. And so maybe they come here on their second or third trip. I certainly didn't know it when I first moved out here, but I've learned that the best thing about living in Las Vegas is you can easily leave Las Vegas. And it's like an island. And instead of being surrounded by water, we're surrounded by the open desert wilderness. And I've turned that desert wilderness not only into my business and my hobby, but just into my life. And it's also, I want to say it's like therapy for me. I went through some things in the military, and getting reconnected into nature and the natural world has really helped me become comfortable with where I'm at today. So that being said, thank you so much. I'm going to finally go back and look at some questions that were asked on Facebook. My apologies for not getting to that sooner. What are the rules when coming into contact with The Bundy cattle. Okay, so never seen cattle in Valley of Fire, so you don't have to worry about that. Um, I love your photos. You have seen so many cool things. Thanks for sharing. This is such a great talk. I would love to have you as my tour guide. Oh, well, that's an honor. Thank you so much for saying that, Tara. Um, and I'm humbled to have all of these experiences and all of these sightings. And I don't take it for granted. I promise you that. So I guess back to you, Brenda, or back to Friends of Gold Butte. Or if anybody has any questions for me, feel free to unmute yourself and ask away. Obviously, I have the gift to gab, my friends. Great photos. I do believe you're
Adam, thank you
Eastern
so much.
Mountain. Oh,
Thank you so much for doing this for us this evening. I'm sure that there'll be questions.
yeah, no problem, Brenda. Thank you for having me. Yeah, we said, so I thought was the mountain bluebird. A little correction, the western bluebird. So what's more rare to see in Valley of Fire? I want to know. Excellent presentation. Oh, thanks a lot. Quick question. Are there mountain lions in Valley of Fire? Well, there should be with a mountain lion rock, right? And there are. I'm sad to say that I cannot report back with any photographic evidence that is of my own. However, through connections with the rangers that I currently have, there has been sightings and photographs of mountain lions in Valley of Fire. And actually, it was a security guard that was guarding uh, the uh, a movie set. Okay, and it was late at night. And it was right across from the visitor center, and he was sitting there, and he got a photo of a mountain lion with his cell phone. So I'm very jealous. Both bluebirds are rare. Okay, awesome. Passing that through. All right. Where is the heart formation? So, I really, a concern for me before doing this and saying yes to Brenda was being maybe part of the reason for crowds in Valley of Fire. And that goes along with letting some of these secretive things out to where like Heart Rock. So that would be a concern for me. If I was to say where Heart Rock was, I don't know where that would go. And my concern would be sometimes if it goes to the masses, what is now a very peaceful place for me and a few others that know of it might become something crazy. So I'm going to say, hey, go to my website. I'm not going to make you book a tour, but shoot me an email and maybe I can give you some info, okay, about Heart Rock. Okay. Any other questions for me? Sorry not to tell you.
You speak up in here.
Yeah, I have a question. What's your favorite hike? Top of the World Arch or something like that?
Yeah, so of course, I think my favorite hike is just me wandering off trail. But the known ones are, top of the world, that's not really too well known. I don't even think Valley of Fire has it as a designated trail yet. That's probably the best view of the park, excluding Valley of Fire Peak. Valley of Fire Peak gets you a little bit higher than that, but when you're at above the top of the world arch, you're at about, I think, like 2,700 feet elevation, and you got a beautiful view. And you got a good view of Silica Dome way out in the distance, which I forgot to mention. That's where Captain Kirk died in the movie Star Trek Generations.
He was thorough. You were thorough, Adam.
What's that?
You were thorough. It was an awesome presentation. You did a great job.
Hey,
Covered
thanks a
all these.
lot. I
Yeah,
appreciate that. And I was concerned with going over time, so hopefully I didn't keep people too much
you
further.
know, they leave, they lose, so.
So
Awesome.
you said you've been there 1,000 times? That's
Oh, yes. There was, especially before the pandemic, like 2018 to 2020, there was quite a few months where I was doing 30 tours a month. And this doesn't mean I was there every day, but certain months I can do 2 tours a day. Since the pandemic, I've changed up my business a little bit to where I'm not going to do 2 tours a day. And I'm more about enjoying every second I have out there. And there were times in the past where I kind of had to cut the tour not short because, when I sell a tour, it's a 6-hour tour if they did a half day. But you could tell sometimes people want more. And I never want to leave Valley of Fire. So now with my business doing just one a day, it's a lot better for me and I think my clients potentially. But like I said, going there day in and day out, it's really allowed me to see so many things, but also gain a greater respect for the place because I see what these animals go through, and it's not always easy out there, and the plants too.
Another question, do you know Annie Swain and her book, The Valley of Fire Hiking Adventure Guide?
What was that?
Annie Swain, do you know Annie Swain?
Oh, Andy Swain.
Annie, her name is Annie Swain. She wrote a book that's about 300 pages and has like 200 hikes, and it's really nice, really nice.
About Valley of Fire?
Uh-huh.
Wow. Really? Do you know how old the book is?
No, but she's been going out there for 30 years.
See, that's awesome. And,
Yeah.
and that's the thing. I've only kind of just a little drop in the bucket. I know I'm not the only one that knows the place, and I'm proven that because of footprints that I see in areas. Now, I will say with the ever-growing popularity, and I think mainly because of social media, I see footprints and people in areas of Valley of Fire that I went over 5 years without ever seeing anything like that. So it's concerning in that way. And that's part of the reason why I've been kind of tight-lipped about it. Not just so I can exploit it all for myself. If that was the case, I'd have guides of my own, but I'm the only employee of my business. I do it because I love it. And I would like to ask, after you guys are done asking me about Valley of Fire, about Friends of Gold Butte and how you guys manage and what you do to help protect that place, and potentially maybe you have some insight for me. Maybe I can implement in Valley of Fire.
Sure.
Can I just say that, from your military past, I'm very glad to see how well that you've transitioned and found your passion. And I'm very happy for you in that regard.
Thank you. That means a lot to me. It really does, and I owe most of it to nature. And I mentioned briefly about my sponsorship to hike the Appalachian Trail. Now that nonprofit, also known as the Walk Off the War program, that slogan is derived from the first person to through hike the Appalachian Trail in all of its entirety, all 2,189.1 miles of it. His name was Earl Schaefer, and he came back from World War II and told everybody he was going to go walk off the war. So like I said, this is more than just a hobby and my livelihood. It's my therapy. And long distance hiking for me allowed me to maybe think about things that I was trying to avoid for a long time, but also being part of the nonprofit organization. I was one of 13 combat veterans to be sponsored in 2013 to hike the Appalachian Trail, and I got voluntold to become the spokesperson. So we had events along the way at local VFWs and American Legions, all to gain awareness of what we were doing. So with me talking about my own experiences, it kind of opened up the gates for fellow veterans of maybe not just the Iraqi war that I was in, but Vietnam vets, World War II vets. And by talking with these fellow veterans and having them share stories with me, it just made me feel more comfortable with maybe the things that I've went through. And, it kind of gave me more reason to kind of find light and to be happy. And I've certainly found that through Valley of Fire. I'm lucky. And we appreciate, oh, hold on. Where's,
I was gonna say, you have a couple questions on chat.
Yeah.
You seen them?
oh yeah, I'm trying. Yeah, okay. What was the camera again? Oh yeah, so the Nikon, it's a Nikon P950, and it's a point and shoot. It's got an 83 times optical zoom. I did have the Nikon P1000, which has 123 times optical zoom. but I lost quality with like closer up photos, and also me being a guide, I got to be like mobile, and the 1000 was super big. But I'm a big fan of the P950, and I've bought 3 of them so far. And we also have another comment here. We appreciate your efforts at good stewardship and education of the public, respecting care and consideration, preservation of our public lands. You find most of your clients are respective to your instructions regarding the impact. Yes, I do find that. And that's the thing for me is I take my job very seriously. Now I'm there to have fun, of course, so is my client, but I take it seriously in a way to where I have the privilege of becoming a link to allow people to feel comfortable in the natural world. Some of my clients that I bring out, it's their first hike ever. So it's just such an honor for me to be able to teach them how to do it, how to respect it, how to tiptoe around the crypto, and why you shouldn't let balloons go and things like that, you know? And sure, everybody that I have is respectful of that. And I will say that my clientele comes from all around the world. And there's been months where I took more people out from outside the country that were from within. So I never know who I'm hanging out with, and it's my way of gambling. You know, I also will say, obviously I have a gift of gab, but when I transferred from Syracuse, New York to Vegas with my job, I was working for Brinks. So that's what brought me to Vegas. I'd never been here before. And was driving the armored truck, picking the money up from the banks and casinos. And I picked up $14 million from the Bellagio in one stop before. They may not want me telling people that, but they should have paid me more. But that job, you know, I really got to see that the city was not built off winners. That is for sure. And I remind my clients, you know, bringing you out to the desert for, you know, maybe $120 per person for 6 hours, I'm probably saving you money.
Absolutely. Were there any more questions? Anyone? Questions? Any more in the chat? Did he address them all?
Well, if you got any more questions, you can't think of them now, you can always reach me by way of email at adam@outdoortraveltours.com.
Adam, I'm going to be contacting you because we need to talk some more.
Okay.
You've given me a lot of ideas.
Is that Brenda?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, we'll definitely, and we can talk about the things we do too, as Friends of Gold Butte, if you'd like to learn those, but I don't want to
Awesome.
keep folks any longer than, you know, than they're coming.
Yeah. Thanks again for inviting me to do this.
Thank you, Adam. That was wonderful.
Appreciate it.
Great job. Thank you, Adam. And thanks
Thank you, my
everyone
friends.
for joining us tonight. It's been a really good evening.
Have a good night, everyone.
Thank
You
you.
too.